The 12 Labors of Heracles Hercules, Greek mythology. What the history Zeus, the supreme god of Olympus, had fallen in love with a beautiful young woman. Her name was Alcmene, and she was married to Amphitryon. King of Terns, Amphitryon had left to fight in the war against Thebes. And so Zeus decided to visit her. The god descended to earth in the form of the king who was away at war, and pretending to be her husband, he impregnated her when Amphitryon returned home. He suspected his wife's infidelity and ordered that she be burned at the stake. Zeus intervened and prevented Alcmene from being burned, revealing himself as the father of the baby. Amphitryon felt honored to raise the son of the god of gods and forgave his wife. The god had great plans for that child. A prophecy said that the first great-grandson of the hero Perseus would be the king of the glorious city of Mycenae. Alcmene was Perseus's granddaughter, so her son would have the right to the crown. However, her cousin was also pregnant. Furious at her husband's infidelity, the goddess Hera decided to force Eileithyia, the goddess of childbirth, to bring forward the birth of Alcmene's cousin's child. Because of the premature birth of his cousin, Heracles lost his right to the throne. When Alcmene finally gave birth, it was discovered there were 2 boys, Heracles, son of Zeus, and Iphicles, son of Amphitryon. Hera's jealousy became uncontrollable. The goddess decided to send 2 venomous serpents to kill the baby. The snakes slithered into the cradle where Heracles and his brother slept. Alcmene awoke, terrified by Iphicles crying, and found baby Heracles holding a dead snake in each hand, fearing divine retribution. The princess took her son to the forest and abandoned him there. However, fate made it so that the goddesses Hera and Athena crossed paths with the abandoned baby. Without realizing he was Heracles, Hera, impressed by the child's strength, decided to nurse him. But the baby sucked the milk so forcefully that he caused the goddess great pain. She pushed him away, and the milk that spilled from her breast pierced the clouds and marked the sky, creating the Milky Way. Because of Hera's sacred milk, little Heracles now possessed divine powers. Athena took the baby and returned him to his mother. When Hera realized that she had nursed her rival's son, she became furious and filled with an immense desire for revenge. Upon seeing Heracles back home, a prophet named Tyesides proclaimed, "Let us celebrate the return of the child who will one day free the world from all monsters and earn his place on Olympus beside his." Further, from here started the most interesting chapter of his story, the madness of Heracles. Heracles grew up strong, skilled, and brave, so much so that his father Amphitryon sent him to train with the best teachers in Greece. He learned archery from Eurytus, chariot driving from Amphidamas, wrestling from Autolycus, music from Linus, and military strategy from Castor, the Spartan hero. But Heracles had a temper that matched his divine strength. One day, Linus reprimanded him for his bad behavior. Furious, the young man struck his teacher with his lyre, killing him instantly to prevent further tragedies. Amphitryon sent his son to the countryside, where he could tend the herds and live a simpler life, while Heracles tended the cattle. The god Hermes appeared before him in disguise. Hermes told him that he would one day perform great deeds for all humanity, and that the gods themselves would recognize his greatness. Years passed, and Heracles grew into an imposing man, tall, muscular, and radiant like a demigod. It was then that King Thespius, knowing of his strength, invited him to hunt a fierce lion that terrorized his lands. Heracles accepted the challenge and, after a long and exhausting battle, strangled the beast with his bare hands. To reward his bravery, King Thespius offered him his daughters as companions. Heracles, unknowingly, slept with all 50 of them, and each bore him a son upon returning home. Heracles found tragedy waiting. His brothers had died in battle. consumed by grief, he decided to leave Trance and went to Thebes, where he married the beautiful Megara, daughter of King Creon. For a time, peace and happiness returned to his life. Megara bore him several children, and Heracles was beloved by the people for his courage and kindness. But Hera had not forgotten. A hatred, she descended from Olympus and, with her divine power, struck Heracles with madness. In his delusion, he believed his own wife and children were enemies sent to kill him, blinded by rage. He killed them all with his own hands. When the madness faded, Heracles fell to his knees. Horrified by what he had done, he begged the gods to take his life. But Apollo, through the oracle of Delphi, told him that redemption could only come through servitude. He was to serve King Eurystheus of Mycenae, the same cousin who had stolen his birthright, and perform 12 impossible tasks. Only then could he be freed from his guilt and purified of his sins. Thus began the most legendary chapter of his story, the 12 labors of Heracles. The first labor, the Nemean lion Eurystheus, jealous and fearful of Heracles' power, designed tasks so impossible that no mortal could ever hope to complete them. His first command was to slay the Nemean lion, a beast whose golden fur was impervious to weapons. Heracles set out for Nemea and soon encountered the monstrous creature. He shot it with arrows, but each one bounced off the lion's hide like pebbles against stone. Realizing he could not pierce its skin, Heracles dropped his weapons and wrestled the beast with his bare hands. The struggle was fierce, but Heracles' strength prevailed. He strangled the lion to death, then used its own claws to skin it, since no blade could cut its hide. He returned wearing the lion's pelt as armor, its head as a helmet, a symbol of his triumph and divine power. Eurystheus was so terrified by the sight of Heracles that he forbade him ever to enter the city. Again, from then on, Heracles would deliver proof of his labors outside the gates, the second labor, the Lernaean Hydra. For the next challenge, Eurystheus ordered Heracles to kill the Hydra, a monstrous serpent with 9 heads living in the swamps of Lerna. Each time one of its heads was cut off, 2 more grew in its place. Heracles went to face the creature, accompanied by his nephew Iolaus. As the Hydra lunged from the shadows, Heracles sliced off its heads one by one, but they regrew instantly. Then Iolaus had an idea. As soon as Heracles cut a head, Iolaus burned the stump with a torch, preventing it from regenerating from its immortal head. Heracles dipped his arrows in its poisonous blood, making them deadly forever. When Eurystheus learned Heracles had received help, he refused to count this labor as valid. But Heracles didn't argue. He simply prepared for the next challenge, the third labor. The Cyrenaean hind Eurystheus then commanded Heracles to capture alive the Cyrenaean hind, a sacred deer of Artemis with golden antlers and bronze hooves. The animal was swift and could outrun any arrow. For a full year, Heracles pursued it across mountains, forests, and rivers until he finally caught it while it drank from a stream. When he carried it back, Artemis herself appeared, furious that her sacred creature had been taken. But Heracles explained his mission humbly and promised to release the deer once he showed it to Eurystheus. Satisfied by his honesty, Artemis allowed him to complete the task. The fourth labor, the Eremontian boar. Next, Heracles was ordered to capture the Eremontian boar, a gigantic beast that ravaged villages on Mount Erymanthus through the freezing snow. Heracles chased the creature until he drove it into a deep snowdrift. Trapping it alive, he carried it back on his shoulders to Mycenae. When Eurystheus saw the monstrous boar, he panicked and hid inside a bronze jar, shouting from within that the labor was complete. The fifth labor, the Augean stables. The next challenge was unlike any before. Heracles was to clean the Augean stables in a single day. King Augeas owned thousands of cattle, and the stables hadn't been cleaned in years. The filth alone could have filled rivers. Heracles, clever as well as strong, diverted the course of two nearby rivers, letting their rushing waters sweep through the stables and cleanse them completely. When Augeas refused to pay the reward he had promised, Heracles returned later and defeated him in battle, but Eurystheus again refused to counter labor, claiming Heracles had been paid for it. The sixth labor, the Stymphalian birds. For his sixth task, Heracles was sent to eliminate the Stymphalian birds, monstrous creatures with metallic feathers and razor-sharp beaks that devoured men. Athena came to his aid. Giving him a bronze rattle forged by Hephaestus, Heracles used it to startle the birds into flight, then shot them down one by one with his poisoned arrows. When the last bird fell, the skies over Stymphalus finally cleared. The seventh labor, the Cretan bull Eurystheus next commanded Heracles to capture alive the Cretan bull, the magnificent beast that King Minos of Crete had once received from Poseidon. The bull breathed fire and had ravaged the island in fury. Heracles sailed to Crete, wrestled the bull by its horns, and subdued it through sheer strength. He carried it across the sea to Eurystheus, who, terrified once again, ordered him to release it immediately. The bull wandered freely until it reached the lands of Marathon, where it caused havoc again in later myths. The eighth labor, the mares of Diomedes, the next task took Heracles to Thrace, where King Diomedes, son of Us, kept for wild horses that ate human flesh. Heracles and his companions fought Diomedes' men and finally captured the mares. To calm them, Heracles fed them their own master, and once they had devoured him, the beasts became tame. He led them back to Eurystheus, who dedicated them to Hera. Some say they were later set free and wandered to Mount Olympus, where they were devoured by wild beasts. The ninth labor, the girdle of Hippolyta, Eurystheus' daughter, at meat, desired the golden belt of Hippolyta, queen of the Amazons. Heracles was sent to retrieve it, upon reaching the land of the Amazons. Heracles explained his mission to Hippolyta, who admired his courage and agreed to give him the belt willingly. But Hera, ever seeking to destroy him, spread rumors among the Amazons that Heracles intended to kidnap their queen. A fierce battle erupted. Believing himself betrayed, Heracles fought and killed Hippolyta, taking the belt by force. He returned it to Eurystheus, who offered it to Admete as a sacred treasure. The tenth labor, the cattle of Geryon for his next feat, Heracles was ordered to travel to the ends of the world, to Erythea, an island far in the west, and steal the red cattle of the giant Geryon. Geryon had three bodies joined together and was guarded by the two-headed dog Orthrus, brother of Cerberus. Heracles killed Orthrus with his club, then faced Geryon himself. Using one arrow dipped in Hydra's blood, he pierced all three bodies at once. He herded the cattle back through dangerous lands, building great pillars at the strait that separates Europe and Africa. What we now call the Pillars of Hercules, the edge of the known world. When he finally returned, Eurystheus sacrificed the sacred herd to Hera, the 11th labor, the apples of the Hesperides. Now the tasks grew harder still. Heracles was to obtain the golden apples of the Hesperides, guarded by a 100-headed dragon named Ladon and by the daughters of Atlas. No one knew where the garden lay. So Heracles wandered the world seeking its location. Along his journey, he encountered Prometheus, the Titan bound for stealing fire from the gods. Heracles broke Prometheus' chains and slew the eagle that tormented him. In gratitude, Prometheus told him how to reach the garden. Following his directions, Heracles found Atlas, who held up the sky. Atlas offered to fetch the apples if Heracles would bear the heavens in his place. Heracles agreed. and lifted the sky upon his shoulders when Atlas returned with the apples. He tried to leave Heracles holding the burden forever, but the hero, feigning agreement, asked Atlas to hold the sky just for a moment so he could adjust his cloak. When Atlas took the heavens back, Heracles seized the apples and departed, laughing. He brought the golden fruit to Eurystheus, who returned them to Athena. The goddess placed them back in the garden of the Hesperides. The 12th labor, capturing Cerberus. The final task was the most terrifying of all. Eurystheus ordered Heracles to descend into the underworld and bring back Cerberus, the three-headed guardian of Hades. Before undertaking this last journey, Heracles went to Eleusis to be initiated into the sacred mysteries so that he might enter and leave the realm of the dead alive. He descended through the cave of Tanum, guided by Hermes and Athena. In Hades, he met the spirits of heroes past, including Theseus and Persephone. Hades allowed him to take Cerberus on one condition, that he subdue the beast without using weapons. Heracles wrestled Cerberus with his bare hands, overpowering the monstrous hound and dragging it to the surface. When Eurystheus saw the creature snarling and thrashing, he screamed in terror and begged Heracles to return it at once to the underworld. Thus the 12 labors were complete. Heracles had faced monsters, gods, and death itself, and triumphed over all. Having completed the 12 impossible labors, Heracles was finally purified of his sins. The gods acknowledged his strength and courage, but his trials were not yet over, even after redemption. The hero's life remained marked by tragedy, the price of being both mortal and divine. After the labors, Heracles undertook many other adventures. He fought alongside kings, led armies, and saved countless lives from monsters and tyrants. But Hera's hatred had not vanished. She still sought to destroy him through pain, betrayal, and deceit. During his travels, Heracles met Deianira, a princess of Calydon. He saved her from a violent centaur named Nessus, who tried to abduct her while they were crossing a river. As Heracles carried Deianira safely to the opposite bank, Nessus, wounded by one of Heracles' poisoned arrows, whispered deceitfully to her before dying. He told her that his blood would act as a love charm, that if she ever feared losing Heracles, she should anoint his garments with it to ensure his faithfulness. Deianira believed his words and kept a vial of the centaur's blood. Years later, when Heracles fell in love with another woman, Deianira remembered the supposed charm. Wanting to win back his love, she soaked one of his tunics in the centaur's blood and sent it to him. But she did not know that the poison of the Hydra was still in Nessus' veins. When Heracles put on the tunic, the poison burned his flesh like fire. It clung to his skin and could not be removed. In agony, Heracles tore at his body, but the more he struggled, the deeper the venom sank. Realizing death was near, he built his own funeral pyre on Mount Ota. He climbed onto it and asked his friend Philoctetes to set it aflame. At first, Philoctetes refused, but Heracles insisted, promising him his mighty bow and arrows as a gift. As the flames rose, thunder rumbled across the sky. The gods themselves watched as the greatest of heroes met his mortal end. But Zeus, moved by his son's suffering, ordered Athena to bring his immortal spirit to Olympus. Thus, Heracles was granted eternal life among the gods. He reconciled with Hera, who at last accepted him as divine. She even gave him her daughter Hebe, goddess of youth, as his wife. From that day on, Heracles sat at the table of the gods, immortal, radiant, and free from all pain. He had conquered monsters, death, and even the hatred of the Queen of Olympus. And so the legend of Heracles, known to the Romans as Hercules, became a symbol of human endurance, strength, and redemption. A reminder that even the greatest suffering can lead to divine glory.